Christy Tanner is EVP and General Manager of CBS News Digital. Her chief duty there is overseeing the production and distribution of the 4-year-old CBSN, an ad-supported 24/7 linear and on-demand news service distributed via OTT and other digital platforms. Although she is responsible for a CBS News product, she works for CBS Interactive, another CBS unit. According to CBS Interactive's 25 different brands constitute the 7th largest generator of digital traffic in the nation. This is correct?
All of the CBS Interactive has more than 25 brands, and when you combine them, we're the 7th largest digital entity in the U.S.
Impressive. Christy joined CBS Interactive in 2013 through CBS's acquisition of TV Guide Digital, where she was CEO. She has also held executive positions with the Washington Post Company, Walter Kluers, and Reed Elsevier. Welcome, Christy. You work for CBS Interactive, as I said, but you operate a news service that relies heavily on content from CBS News. Talk about the relationship and how that all works, two different corporate units. I know from my own experience it's sometimes tough. How do you relate to CBS News? Who does what and who's in charge of the content and all?
You know, it's been a very collaborative operation since we launched 4 years ago. So just to give you an example of a typical day, starting in the early morning hours, 5, 6 a.m., we will be sort of rerunning a half-hour wheel of that sort of middle of the night news programming that you would also see on broadcast. And at 7 o'clock, we recently launched an original news hour, meaning we produce it at CBSN, and we're taking material that may have been produced by affiliates, partners such as the BBC. We're doing original segments. So this morning we had Deborah Pata, who is our Johannesburg correspondent, talking with our anchor about a roundup of international news. And then we'll do one-on-one interviews on the set of CBSN during that hour. And then at 8 a.m., we have what is really kind of a cut down of the CBS This morning show. So it's the 7 o'clock hour, the best of the 7 o'clock hour, and the best of the 8 o'clock hour that is run on CBSN between 8 and 9 a.m. 9 a.m. we go back to being live on the set of CBSN, and then depending what the day has in front of us, for instance, today we'll go live with Sundar Pichai's testimony in front of Congress. And however long that lasts, we'll be live with that. So, we kind of roll with the punches in terms of live and breaking news, but we have a schedule that is very much a mix of delivering what's the product of broadcast to the OTT audience and to the mobile and desktop audience, and then creating original content ourselves.
When you say ourselves, you have your own staff, you have your own anchor, producers, reporters?
Right. We have about 150 people working for CBS News Digital. They write for the website. They produce CBSN as a more or less 24/7 news operation. They oversee social for all of our brands. And then that also includes our engineering and product development staff as well.
Are you the editor? I mean, you're the person who decides what goes on and when. Yes?
Well, I'm the general manager, so I oversee engineering, product development, editorial, marketing, etc. In terms of getting in the weeds, I'm not setting up what is the A block of the 7 a.m. hour. We have staff of producers who do that, but I definitely am involved and weigh in terms of our strategy and direction. And an example of that would be, we've done a lot of research in the last 2 years about what the OTT audience is interested in. The average age of our audience is 38, and they have told us they want coverage of topics that they don't feel are being covered elsewhere, that they can't find in other news outlets. So we started covering climate change really aggressively a couple years ago as a result of that research. They also told us that they want more international news, so that's why you see us doing 5 minutes of what's happening around the world, which may not seem like a lot of time, but that's just a roundup. But we'll do that every half hour, and we may talk about international stories that you are not going to see elsewhere, and then local. They told us they wanted more local news, and we worked very closely with our local division, which is a separate division, but they are set to launch CBSN New York this month.
That's an extraordinary number, 38, in news especially. What's I guess the median age for 60 Minutes is somewhere in the 60s?
I actually don't know what the median age is for 60 Minutes, but I hear from a lot of families who watch it together, so I think, that kind of speaks to how Nielsen measures broadcast TV in some respects. But like fans of the CBS brands are all over the age spectrum. We interview people all the time who want to come to work for us who say, I just graduated from college last year, but I grew up watching Sunday Morning and 60 Minutes with my family, and I believe in those brands and the news products, and that's what I want to work for.
Well, tell us more about your audience. How big is it? And is there can you profile the audience in any other way?
Well, on CBSN, we're averaging about 1 million streams a day. And that's about 50% OTT, about 30% desktop, and about 20% mobile. So that's how we're reaching those million people with the stream, with the live stream. But we also have, I think 65 million monthly unique users on our website, cbsnews.com. So we're also reaching them just through what we've written, and we're often attaching a relevant video to whatever it is that we're writing.
So the split is OTT 50, desktop 30, mobile 20. How do you see that mix changing over the next few years?
What's really weird about that mix is that it hasn't changed in 4 years. So, the day that I came to work for CBSN, that was the breakdown of where people were streaming, and it has remained the same as we have added audience. So as we've added new sources for OTT, we've added, when I started, we had Apple and Roku. Now we're on more than a dozen devices, ranging from Samsung TVs, we just launched Vizio TVs, PlayStation, Xbox, the list goes on. And so as those sources have grown, OTT has remained at 50%, but we've also grown our desktop and mobile live streaming audience for a number of reasons. One, we're really, really good at SEO and search, and Google has also prioritized in searches for news, credible sources such as CBS News, and then if you're live on top of that, you receive even more, I would say, I don't know, juice from the algorithm.
Well, that's your answer is surprising me a little bit, because I thought you were going to say mobile, that mobile would rise, but your point, I guess, there is OTT is just coming on now.
Well, everything's rising. Everything's rising. I would say the entire digital footprint is rising, and so everything's kind of going up at the same rate, though, which is why you see that mix being the same. It's not exactly 1-to-1, but we. And this is also, we're talking about an average over the course of a year. So to give you another example of how, we see huge mobile spikes when there's big breaking news. So during the hurricanes in North and South Carolina earlier this year, we had a 600% spike in mobile traffic. And we saw the same phenomenon last year during the hurricanes in Texas and Florida. In those DMAs that the hurricanes were headed for, we saw these huge mobile spikes, and what we saw is that as people were evacuating these regions, they were in their cars and they were streaming CBSN on their mobile phones. So it really depends on the situation.
Well, yeah, it's not, people use the platform that's most convenient, I guess that's at any given moment. What you talk about 12 different OTT platforms, that must be a terrible chore. We heard in this on our first panel that these things are always changing. Is it a big chore to keep up with 12 different platforms?
I mean, well, that's
Or
what
more
we
than
do. That's
12.
our business. So we have a really, really good engineering team. And that's the reason that CBS Interactive is number 7, is we have really focused on the investment in technology and engineering and product development. And so we have a lot of expertise across the company. One of the things that we're able to leverage is that there are 3 other major business units who are also launching on Xbox and PlayStation. So the engineering team from CBS All Access talks to the engineering team from CBS News, and we're able to get more out of this whole collection of properties that we own. But in response to whether is it a chore, I would say that QA is one of the most challenging things that we deal with. Not only QA for different platforms. Let's just talk about within a brand. Let's take Samsung TVs. Samsung's Tizen platform is on more recent TV sets, and so someone encounters a glitch on their older Samsung TV. It can be a challenge to troubleshoot exactly what went wrong there. And same thing in terms of data is also a really challenging area for QA. So being able to track everything through all these platforms is really where we hit a lot of challenges. What is defined as a stream start on Xbox may be different from what's a stream start on Roku. And so the lack of third-party measurement in this space, I would say, is it's really a shame. That was another thing when I started 4 years ago. Everybody said, "Oh, next quarter we'll have third-party measurement of OTT," and that was
Is that still true?
I
What do you say today?
I think 12 quarters have passed since that was.
So what do you
made.
say today? I mean, if somebody would ask you, I mean, are we
I
getting
have
closer?
no idea.
have
It's
no
sort of
idea.
like asking me, is Brexit happening or not? Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. You mentioned game platforms. I didn't even think of that. Do you have any?
I mean,
Sense of how big
when we
that
launched in the
company?
gaming platforms, it was really a why not. And surprisingly to me, a lot of people watch on gaming platforms. It's probably, if you added them up, I mean, it's probably close to I don't know, 7-8% of traffic. That kind of stayed steady. I think people have bought new devices and they've signed up for new properties. I think if you were streaming from an Xbox a couple years ago, but you bought a Samsung TV last year, you might switch to streaming things through your Samsung TV. But
So
yeah.
it's Roku, Amazon, Apple, Samsung.
Oh,
in
in terms
order
of the
importance?
Roku is the biggest source of streams among OTT devices right now, and then after that it's Apple and Amazon very close, neck and neck, and after that would be Samsung gaining ground quickly.
You say you have 1 million streams. What exactly does that mean? It does mean people if I come in and I watch 2 hours linear, is that a stream or?
Wait, what do you mean if you
Well,
watch 2 hours?
you say you get a 1 million streams.
Oh, is that one stream?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be one
well,
stream.
So
If you
so
didn't.
how do
close
people
out of
watch?
it.
Do they watch? Do they come in and they watch for an hour or so, or a half an hour, or are they coming in and looking at those clips and on a sort of on an
It's a
on-demand
good,
basis?
very good question. Live is really where we see the majority of streams coming from, and on demand is used frequently, but it's more to find and search something you're specifically looking for. We don't see this behavior that I think a lot of people thought would happen, which might be like making a playlist of news stories you want to watch and then watching them in some kind of fashion. Nobody does that. Everybody is primarily looking for immediacy, and then if they missed a big interview, if you missed Rex Tillerson, you go looking for that.
It's advertiser supported, but the old newspaper model was pay and ad. Any thought of adding a paywall, at least for maybe the on-demand stuff? Or
Well, we do look at paywall potential, and right now we've chosen to make the service free in the U.S. I could see some kind of a paywall product in the future. It probably wouldn't look like the service that we're providing right now. I think it would be maybe there's an appetite for in more features behind a paywall. I'm not sure.
Or for niche audiences, you talk about international or certain business, for instance, they may be able to be willing to pay.
Yes, yeah. We're always looking at potential for paywall properties. Right now, CBS All Access is our paywall product, and that's where we're focusing within the company.
Well, now, 24-hour news is a concept that's about 30 or 40 years old. It started with Ted Turner back in 1980. What makes CBS News special? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else out there?
Well, compared to other 24-hour news services, CBS News, CBSN is really consistent with the CBS News brand, which is that we focus on facts as opposed to opinion. We're nonpartisan, and we have found that the audience we're attracting, it becomes loyal because of that. So I would say that people, to the extent that we've done research and that people write into us, we're attracting the audience that is not interested in hyper-partisan opinion and lots of panels of people shouting at each other. They want the news, they want facts, and they want expert analysis, but they don't want partisan analysis.
And you okay, well, that would be different. That would definitely be different than when we get on cable. One thing I felt was a little counterintuitive. I see digital as sort of a short-form medium, but yet you've gone out and created a long-form documentary. I assume it's long-form, a documentary unit. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, there were stories that we wanted to tell that take longer than a 1.5 to 5 minute piece, and so we wanted to be able to dig deeper into topics, and that actually is something that the audience has told us. They want to dig deeper, and so one thing that we see is that if the morning show has booked somebody to come and talk about a topic, let's say it's analysis of the El Chapo trial, that person's probably going to get max 3 minutes on broadcast because there just isn't enough time. That same person will walk across the hall, go to the CBSN anchor desk, and talk about El Chapo for 10, 15 minutes. And the audience sticks with it and is interested in it, and they want to go in depth on these topics. So we see that in the day-to-day behavior. When we looked at what kind of pieces would we produce to dive deeper into topics, we realized that we could go 20, 30 minutes in producing pieces. And it also, frankly, gets you a lot more bang for your buck if you're sending somebody all around the world to Nepal or Myanmar to cover those stories, if you come back with a 20 to 30 minute documentary. And so the audience has come along with it. This is a sponsored series called CBSN Originals. We also, again, in this series, try to tackle the stories that nobody else is covering. So a couple of years ago, we covered the changing nature of gender, the rise in the use of personal pronouns. And it was something that is much more talked about now, 2 years later, but it was just starting to get talked about then. We talked about the massacre of the Rohingya in Myanmar, and we went to Myanmar earlier this year. And a month later, you had the Cambridge Analytica and all the criticism of Facebook about the problems that Facebook has caused by being the source of the internet in that country. But we were telling that story a couple months before the rest of the world was looking at it, and so that's what we try to do. We try to get ahead of the curve.
Well, it's also in keeping with the great CBS tradition of long-form news programming. Goes back to ancient times. To the 50s and 60s. I mean, seriously. Well, speaking of that, speaking of old things, we talked about this earlier. You know, we're in a multi-platform world. Why are you ignoring the most ubiquitous platforms, cable and broadcast? You put this product on OTT, yet cable and broadcast are sitting there. They could use another differentiated cable product or news product. Have you thought about that?
Well, you know, CBS at the moment has only one cable distribution outlet, and that's Pop TV, in which it owns a 50% interest. So I don't think Lionsgate right now wants to turn Pop TV into a news channel, as far as I know. But in terms of, we're definitely not ignoring cable and broadcast, and we're definitely not ignoring broadcast. So as an example, speaking of CBSN originals, I think it was more than 75 of our affiliates actually run our originals series, and they just take it and run those pieces on broadcast. So we actually work really, really closely with all of our affiliates day in and day out. So if you're familiar with the NewsPath product, we heavily rely on NewsPath, giving us the best local stories of the day. And when there is something like a hurricane or a big news story happening somewhere, actually the opposite of ignoring the affiliate, we'll actually just cut over to the KHOU, and when in the middle of the night when Bush dies, we'll just take their coverage because they're the experts on that topic, and they're ready and waiting.
Well, which the networks do on broadcast too, when things first break before they get their own resources.
Yeah, I would say
on
we
the
go
ground.
to it more. Let me just say definitively, I'm a believer that our local reporters are just as good as our national reporters, and there's often no reason why we shouldn't use a local reporter instead of somebody who's at the national level.
Well, I've made I was in Pittsburgh during the shooting last month, and I wonder why the networks just don't throw it to the local station to cover those stories. They do initially, but they feel they have to get their own personnel there, and sometimes I think that they just get in the way. But that's my comment.
Well, I would say we have a really, really good working relationship with our affiliates, and we have a lot of respect for what they do day in and day out, and for their knowledge of their communities. And in some cases, they're really the best source of information, and particularly when it comes to politics, we started again responding to this interest in more local news. We started a franchise about a year ago specifically during the midterm coverage. We have a daily political show at 5 o'clock every day called Red and Blue, and we call this segment Local Matters, and we really try to book a local newspaper or affiliate reporter every day for that show to illuminate what's happening in local races. And we also booked candidates in races that might have seemed obscure, but some of those candidates later achieved fame and notoriety.
Well, speaking of local, CBS has another initiative going, I guess, out of the stations division to do local OTT news services. Do you have a role in that? Do you?
Well, so our local division is separate from CBS Interactive, but we work really closely together, and it's a collaborative relationship. We have a very good engineering and tech playbook that we developed for CBSN. So we've shared that with the local group. We also have a good editorial workflow that we worked out, and so we've provided guidance and expertise. Adam Weiner runs our local digital operation, and so we worked really closely with him in developing those products. CBSN New York will be launching this month, and you'll be able to get to it from within the CBS News apps, as well as in the local
I have to say,
site.
It's really great how CBS is able to, you can leverage CBS News to do the OTT, and then your OTT experience to leverage the local. It seems to make sense corporate-wise. We have any questions out there? Over here.
I've got a question about virtual MVPDs and whether you're actively becoming a part of the subscriber packages, because I know you're on Pluto and you offer the free service and it's not behind a paywall. Have you pursued that, and what kind of hurdles have you faced doing that?
Yeah, so we're on Pluto and Zumo, which are free services. We're also on Hulu Live, and I would say we're Showtime and All Access are part of Amazon channels, and we'd love to be a part of that too at some point.
Hi, Christy. I heard you say, people still not making playlists, which drives me crazy. They're not taking advantage of the platform. What's your forecast for the future of, be your own producer, right, and customize a newscast? Do you see that happening? Is there anything content creators can do to facilitate that use?
Well, I think there are a number of ways in which the world is not taking advantage of digital television as a platform, and to me, one of the ways we're not doing that right now is we really are just putting out a product that's kind of like cable or broadcast, in that none of the graphics are interactive. Now, that's a platform challenge, because how do we make it work exactly the same with your Roku remote and your Apple remote and everything else? But to me, that's where the potential is. I think the potential is less in playlisting, though it's always worth exploring. But we just don't see that behavior, and we've looked for it. But I think really adding more value to the news experience through graphics and interactivity, the ability to dive deeper is something that we're looking at and that we'd like to develop. And I think if you look at one area that I think is a no-brainer that we will get to, I hope, in the next year, would be the ability to do picture-in-picture and make that clickable within our services. So let's say we're just going to be repeating the wheel in our next hour because it's the middle of the night. We might encourage, through picture-in-picture clickability, somebody to go to local and just check in with what's happening at local, or vice versa. And I think that's what I see as the opportunity, is to cross-promote. We've got now, by the end of this month, we'll have five streaming channels within CBS Interactive that you'll be able to sort of change the channel on. But we're not making it easy to change the channel through the interface as it stands right now.
Hey there. I was really curious if you're able to see with all these platforms what the live viewing is like. I'm a big fan. I watch it all the time. But I'm always curious to know, like during an event, can you monitor that? Do you get any feedback from these vendors?
Yeah, we use Conviva to monitor live viewing and keep account. And I mean, I could look in it right now. We look at it sometimes. There's like 3 people in this place called Nunavut, Canada, who are watching, and it was 1 person 2 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden one day 3 people popped up. So, we are paying attention. We're not living and dying by that, because there's just not enough scale right now. But I see that as being an evolution here, and I think one of the ways we would do that would be for programming differently for different time zones. So, what should we be programming in our 6-ish, 7-ish Eastern time news, and how might we change that at 9 or 10 when the West Coast is really more? Should we be programming a higher mix of West Coast news at that time? And I think that's where I would see, data on live viewing affecting our programming.
Do you have time for one more?
Sure, I can do one
Okay,
more.
one more question, quick one.
Yeah, I have a question about data. So you're obviously on all these platforms, so I'm assuming you're getting a lot of data back. Are you able to handle that data? How are you looking at it? Are you using it for content development?
We're definitely using it for content development. In fact, we launched we opened up a new newsroom. We renovated, opened up a new newsroom within CBS News in which digital and broadcast news gathering teams are sitting together for the first time. And in that new newsroom, we put Chartbeat up. And honestly, you would think that we like had a monitor for, I don't know, the sounds of Mars in the newsroom, because people were like, what is that? That's amazing. I've never seen that before. And so, but we're able to see on the website what are this is obvious to anybody who's been in digital for a long time, but just that was a big breakthrough for us. And it actually does help with programming decisions. I mean, you can really see, in the course of a day that, well, actually, are people still interested in a certain story, or is that story starting to wane?
All right, well, Christy, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having
and,
me.
Let's give
Great
her a hand of
questions.
applause.
Thanks, everybody.